friends, can't lose weight? Here are my 10 fat-burning foods to eat. You'll be surprised how many on this list can be enjoyed by ketogenic, vegan, or just people on a regular diet. And if you're pressed for time, I place chapters in the show notes so that you can just skip to the chapter and not listen to my explanations of why you should eat these foods even if you're not interested in burning fat. Number 1 is the mulberry. Did you know that mulberries actually have more anthocyanins than blueberries? Anthocyanins have been shown to help reduce weight by activating brown fat in animal studies. Mice fed polyphenols from mulberries lost weight specifically from fat and improved their fasting glucose. This occurred even though both groups of mice ate the same amount of food. Now, we aren't mice, and losing weight doesn't mean that the mice got healthier and lived longer. Unfortunately, these mice didn't have that luxury to live long. But these studies just illustrate the power of plant phytonutrients, like the anthocyanins in mulberries on fat metabolism. And mulberries, they are one of the most concentrated sources of anthocyanins. They also have a lower glycemic index at 25. Now, my parents had a mulberry tree when we were growing up, and they told me how healthy our tree was and how it was so precious, but, I didn't believe them. I was a teenager. Nevertheless, I did enjoy picking and eating them fresh off the tree. Little did I realize that eating them probably helped me slim down. Now, here's a breakdown of the different types of polyphenols found in mulberries. Now, do you recognize any of these ingredients from my previous videos? How about number 3, chlorogenic acid? That's the polyphenol found in your morning cup of coffee. So number 2, that morning cup of coffee may be a fat-burning liquid if it has chlorogenic acid. Now, not all coffees have chlorogenic acid. And how do we know that that's the beneficial molecule? Well, this study randomized middle-aged, non-obese people to drink cheap coffee, basically instant coffee with or without chlorogenic acid. They drank less than a cup a day, and then they checked their abdominal fat and weight. And the people who drank the chlorogenic acid coffee actually lost more weight in 12 weeks, and they lost the weight in their abdominal and visceral fat as seen in their CAT scans. It's also quite interesting that their total cholesterol went up by 7 points by the end of the study, which is not unexpected when you're drinking unfiltered coffee. Now, as I mentioned, not all coffees have chlorogenic acid. That's because it's eliminated when you're roasting the coffee or when you add the wrong ingredients like casein. Now, have you ever debated on which country you should buy your coffee from? Now, I've been wondering that too. And here's a chart of chlorogenic acid versus caffeine ratios from different countries. I look for food with the highest antioxidants like chlorogenic acid for its health benefits besides burning fat. So from this graph, Ethiopian coffee ranks above all the rest on this table. I actually have a confession to make. I'm not a coffee drinker, but I've also never said that I ever made it a habit to drink coffee in any of my videos. At least not real coffee. That Frappuccino stuff I was hooked on for a little while. Now, I've never had to use coffee as a stimulant for studying in college, medical school, or even working 100 plus hours a week in residency and fellowship. And honestly, I'm kind of hesitant to start coffee because I can't tolerate caffeine. I also have plenty of energy without adding a highly caffeinated beverage to my daily routine. But I bought this flask several months ago and I've never opened it. See, the tag is still here. I do intend to use it. I even bought organic coffee filters. Now, the reason why I want to add coffee is because it's been associated with boosting autophagy, which is how the body clears out trash and recycles material. By being efficient in autophagy, mice have been shown to live 17% longer. Now, coffee is the seed of a cherry fruit, and it is enjoyed roasted. Now, look at this table. You lose a ton of chlorogenic acid while roasting. So dark roasting barely has any chlorogenic acid, and at the same time, it brings out more caffeine. If you drink espresso, you'll be interested in this table. There is barely any chlorogenic acid at Starbucks. You get a little more if you drink their cappuccino, which is still less than you would get drinking the cheap instant type from the supermarket. So according to this meta-analysis, they found that drinking 500 milligrams a day of chlorogenic acid reduced weight. And if you drank that at Starbucks, that would mean you would have to drink hundreds of cups of Starbucks espresso, which would be toxic levels of caffeine. Caffeine, by the way, also induces weight loss, but it has a lot of neurological side effects and can induce diarrhea, excessive urination, heart arrhythmias, and sleep disturbances. But you may already be drinking a chlorogenic acid-rich caffeinated coffee and not losing any weight. That may be because you're adding the wrong condiments to your coffee. This study showed that adding sugar really nullifies the beneficial effects of weight loss, and so does adding dairy. Now, some people think that just because you have a lot of fat, it doesn't mean you are unhealthy because they exercise. And I think the perfect example of people who are considered healthy but have a lot of body fat and are overweight are sumo wrestlers. Have you ever wondered why Japan has sumo wrestlers? I find it amazing that all of Japan isn't sumo size, despite the fact that sumo wrestlers were started as early as the 3rd century as a ceremonial event to celebrate New Year's tied to agriculture for the Japanese emperors. Over time, it evolved into a national sport. And I find it even more amazing that they started training children to be sumo wrestlers. They literally have it down to a science on how to gain weight. They have a regimented way of eating, which by all accounts is considered healthy food. They eat mostly hot pots or chanko nabe, full of meat and vegetables, along with rice and noodles. Sounds like an Asian diet. Asians love to eat hot pot, which is kind of fun because you're basically cooking as you eat. So you have this pot of boiling soup and a whole bunch of raw vegetables and meat that you then dip in the boiling soup and take it out when it's done. My mom loved eating hot pot. After the item cooks, there is actually a small bowl with the sauce to flavor the food. She would make a spicy soy sauce base and crack a raw egg in it. No one ate like that except for my mom because my dad thought that was high risk for food poisoning and discouraged all of us from eating raw eggs. Now, my mom said it was cooked because she was dipping hot food in it. I was always kind of suspicious. That's what I call a logical logic. I was pretty disgusted, but what can you do as a kid? Sumo wrestlers purposely overeat and consume 4,000 calories a day. Along with the food, they drink alcohol like beer to get more calories, and then they sleep immediately after eating. They actually only eat twice a day. And in America, we are nearly eating a sumo diet and living part of a sumo lifestyle, either sleeping or sitting on the couch to watch TV or at our desks after a meal. That's why I got rid of my chairs and I only have standing desks, except for this desk. Now, we are worse than the sumo lifestyle. At least sumo wrestlers spend over 10 hours a week exercising, and the average American maybe walks a mile a day. Now, do we really need to spend millions of dollars of taxpayer money trying to figure out why people gain weight and which biochemical hormones are the culprit when we have an entire population in Japan which is normal in weight, yet they know the art to getting people sumo size and have had that science down to a T for a couple thousands of years. Now, we have turned eating into a science really in the wrong ways. And some people demand clinical trials to change their diet. Now, to me, this is again a logical logic. And there are two types of people who like to get things done. And then there are people who like to think about it. The constant back and forth, the online debates really prevents progress. Sounds kind of like Congress. If you want to be a sumo wrestler, you're picked during your childhood. By all accounts, sumo wrestlers are athletic people, again, training rigorously over 10 hours a week. However, they are not metabolically healthy, even though they are physically very strong. This study compared sumo children with obese, non-exercising children, and they found that sumo wrestler children had higher blood pressures. High blood pressure is a big deal. It is a key that starts all the other metabolic problems. Think about a balloon and what happens when you put more and more gas in it. You're increasing pressure, and the walls of the balloon, they get thinner and thinner and eventually pops. This is what chronic high blood pressure is doing to your arteries. And like the balloon, it can take several times before it pops. And when your arteries pop in the wrong place, you get symptoms. Small vessels, really distant from the pump, which is your heart, gets hit first. And that's how people get neuropathy in their feet. But really, you can get neuropathy anywhere in your body. And that's one reason why heart attacks can be silent. But your body is super resilient and will try its best to repair no matter the circumstances. Remember Franklin Delano Roosevelt? He's the only president who served 4 terms and navigated our country through several international crises. But because he's our president, we get to see his health data. Look at his blood pressure. Every time there was a major national or international event, his blood pressure was even higher than his high blood pressure at baseline. And that was already pretty high. Now, how high can you go? Well, for FDR, his maximum systolic blood pressure was 350 because that's when he had his fatal stroke at 63 years old. His personal doctors recommended this treatment regimen: rest, UV light, and reducing flatulent-producing foods. Now, this is a recipe for failure. I do agree with avoiding straining when you go poop, but he can't help but strain because they took away those flatulent-producing foods to help him get some good microbes, which are rich in fiber and phytonutrients that would have helped him poop and lower his blood pressure. They also took away seasonings like spices that would have improved his arterial inflammation. Apparently, Roosevelt served some of the worst tasting foods in the White House. Granted, he was navigating our country during the Great Depression. Senator Hiram Johnson from California complained that eating with Roosevelt was not too palatable, dining on rainwater soup and rubber scrub, and his cook gave him salads of mayonnaise, canned fruit, gelatin with cream cheese. Now, it's no wonder Roosevelt had blood pressure problems. He had a team of 5 doctors measuring his vitals, blood work, and urine daily. And that's why we have this kind of data. When he didn't pee well, they gave him Digitalis to dilute his urine. Digitalis is from the Foxglove plant. It's a beautiful plant and very potent as it has Digoxin, which is actually now a prescription medication, works by improving blood flow through reducing arrhythmias and congestive heart failure. Now, I'm sure he had some form of congestive heart failure with that kind of blood pressure. Digoxin, though, wasn't approved by the FDA until 10 years after he died in 1954. So many people on the internet are advocating blood tests online. President Roosevelt got daily blood tests. His liver, kidney, blood chemistry, blood counts, and even an inflammatory marker called the sedimentation rate. They were all within normal range. And this gave his doctors a false sense of comfort. The only number repetitively abnormal was his blood pressure, and they couldn't fix that. That's because there were no blood pressure medications created at that time. His labs were reviewed by 5 medical doctors. Having run tens of thousands of blood tests over 25 years as a medical doctor myself, having normal blood tests does not mean a person is healthy. But you don't need a blood test to know you have a problem. You just need this, a blood pressure machine. Now, I bought this on Amazon for about $20. It's pretty cheap, and it goes around my wrist like this. So you line the monitor up to your blood vessel, and then there are instructions that come with it. Now, most of these online devices, they're actually inaccurate, and they're not validated. So if you want a validated device, go to this website. If you have Medicare, ask your doctor for a prescription so that Medicare will reimburse you for the cost of a machine. However, I just got this machine on Amazon, validated it myself with my own sphygmometer, which your doctor will also have, so you can bring it to your doctor's office to double check its accuracy. And really a simple nurse visit will do. The wrist meters, they're not as accurate like the arm meters, like this one. However, something is better than nothing. On April 12th, President Roosevelt woke up with a headache and stiff neck. That's a bad sign that his people missed. And despite everyone commenting on how well he looked that morning, he actually had a massive fatal stroke. Unfortunately for Roosevelt, his doctors didn't know about Walter Kepner, a Duke University physician that cured malignant hypertension and morbid obesity with his infamous rice diet program. Basically, it was a diet of pure carbohydrates with no fat that cured patients of malignant hypertension and obesity. Now, this diet needs to be medically supervised as it is very nutrient deficient. And I'm not saying that this diet is healthy, but it probably would have helped Roosevelt and would have been a healthier diet than what his physicians prescribed. It's basically an elimination diet. His physicians repeatedly emphasized giving Roosevelt vitamins, but they didn't elaborate on which ones. However, at least they knew vitamins were important, but just randomly taking vitamins is unlikely to change blood pressure. And that's what happened to Roosevelt. Roosevelt was not morbidly obese, unlike sumo wrestlers. nor did he have the time to exercise like an athlete, being the President of the United States during the time of war. He also had polio as a child and had permanent nerve damage to his legs. Like I've said multiple times, don't take your chances with infectious diseases. You're not going to be able to determine the outcome. His diet was also deficient on vegetables, unlike a sumo wrestler's diet. The whole point of these two examples is to illustrate how you can't out-exercise a bad diet and that you can have silent inflammation even with perfectly normal lab tests. Don't ignore vital signs. They are called vital for a reason. Blood pressure, heart rate, and respiratory rate need to be looked at seriously. High blood pressure, even with perfectly normal blood tests and a normal body weight, can still be damaging, quite deadly in the end, and it will cause a massive catastrophic event sooner or later. And it's hard to people to put two and two together because the consequences can occur several decades later. Our nation has a high blood pressure crisis, as half of Americans have high blood pressure and only a quarter of them have it under control. High blood pressure prevents blood flow. You can't do anything without blood flow. Even when you have an infection and you get the right antibiotics, the antibiotics will struggle to get there. Roosevelt died at 63 years old. Many people don't think sumo wrestlers are actually obese, and you can call it whatever you want, but the end result is excess weight. Sumo size, like sumo wrestlers, still have a higher mortality despite being athletic with high skeletal muscle mass. Simply being overweight negatively affects blood cholesterol and is associated with a lower HDL and higher LDL cholesterol. And abnormal cholesterol is another major contributor to poor blood flow. Now, this is why I eat foods rich in anthocyanins to improve blood flow. Anthocyanins, they're all water soluble, so you're not going to be finding them in ingredients like plant cooking oils or in any form of animal oils like creams, ghee, butter, or lard, unless you're getting pieces of plant material in it. Some people think India is a great example that you can eat animal oil safely. Well, it's not a longevity country, mostly because so many people are malnourished, and now they hold the world record for having the second highest number of diabetes. And this is despite not being sumo sized. And that's why it's important, no matter where you live, to look for fat-burning foods, even if you aren't overweight. Have you ever had a seeded dark purple grape? You may be surprised that grapes, number 4, despite being deliciously sweet, can reduce your body fat. This study overfed people and asked them to snack on sodas, chocolate bread, chips, and chocolate bars. That actually sounds quite delicious and was exactly what I ate growing up. The study group gave one group of participants a dummy pill, and the second group got pills stuffed with 2 grams of grape extracts rich in polyphenols. That's about 4 cups of fresh grapes, which I can easily eat in one sitting. Then they literally biopsied their subcutaneous fat. Now, that doesn't sound so pleasant. Did you know that you can gain 22 pounds of subcutaneous fat before it adversely affects your metabolism? Now, this is another reason why people don't see the consequences of metabolic diseases for several years or decades later. Subcutaneous fat is a fat right underneath your skin. And when you gain more fat, you don't necessarily gain more blood vessels to feed that fat. Now, imagine if your house was the only house with a faucet in your neighborhood, and every day your neighbors had to go to your house to get water. Obviously, your lawn would be the greenest, and your neighbors would probably have yellow lawns, since you're at the periphery of the water source. That's what happens to fat cells that become supersized. The cells at the periphery are unhealthy and they begin to leak out fatty acids. This is because they lack blood flow, and this induces an immune response, basically inflammatory signaling into your bloodstream. Now, these people only ate like this for 31 days, and the group receiving the grape extracts, they actually showed multiple changes in their genes, which you see in purple. And when they looked at fat tissue under the microscope, they also saw anatomical changes. There were less blood vessels growing in fat, and the fat cells were smaller. Again, if you can't get blood flow, then things just won't grow. And the group which took the grapeseed extract overall gained less weight. But they still gain weight, just not as much. So basically, you can't totally fool your body, even though people keep trying. And it's really best not to snack on junk food. Now, if you're on a keto diet and don't want the sugar spikes of eating the entire grape, then eat the peel and seed and give the pulp to someone else, like your kids. That's what I used to do when I first introduced grapes to my kids. That's because the seeds and the pulp, they're actually choking hazards. But that's the healthiest part of the grape. The peel, especially the seed, they essentially house all of the polyphenols. And the seeds have nearly 70%. So now that my kids are older, I encourage them to eat all of the grape, especially the seeds, because they're expensive and I have to go out of my way to buy them. And in the beginning, I had to blend it for them. If you have diabetes or prediabetes, I hope you will be comforted to know that grapes are not a high glycemic index food. But when you process foods, it's going to go up a little bit. So raisins are higher in glycemic index than fresh grapes. And grapes have half the glycemic index of a slice of white bread. If you're counting your carbohydrates, 1 cup of grapes is only worth 16 grams of carbs. Grapes are so delicious that you can't help to share them. But don't do what my friend did and share grapes with dogs. Grapes are deadly to dogs as they can cause renal failure because they have a high concentration of tartaric acid, which is toxic to their kidneys. Have you used cream of tartar for baking? Did you know that it is made from tartaric acid? Cream of tartar is a byproduct of winemaking. Potassium hydroxide is added to wine, and the end result is a crystal that forms a hard crust inside wine barrels. Tartaric acid is also found in grape and lime flavored beverages, gelatin desserts, jams, jellies, and hard candies. Now remember, these are not real food as they are chemically created. If you have a problem with plant-based patties like Impossible Burgers and Beyond Meat because they are chemically created Frankenstein-like foods, then you should have a problem eating chemically created Frankenstein sweet foods too. Take a look at your bread and which chemicals they used in it. Fructose, sucrose, inulin? All of these ingredients are added to add flavor or texture through manipulating the science of food. And that's why food chemistry is big business. Now, we do chemistry all the time when you're cooking. When you turn a liquid into a solid, that's chemistry too. And there's nothing wrong with chemistry as our bodies are biochemical factories. But the quality of food that goes into a factory makes a difference in our output, in our health. So it's kind of like a car. You can use diesel or different shades of unleaded gas or compressed natural gas. But if your car is programmed and designed for unleaded and you pour half unleaded and then the other half diesel, what do you think that's going to do to your engine? Now, what if you just use 1/10 of diesel? Would your car run at all? Our bodies are the same way. They are programmed to eat natural whole foods with single ingredients. In these whole foods are the correct ratios of macronutrients and micronutrients. But we've gone overboard and basically created chemical cocktails of pretend foods. Now, my rule is if I can't find it in nature, then it's really not natural. And seriously, how is pastel, red and green colored food that we serve for Easter, Christmas, and birthday parties edible? I would honestly eat that soy-based patty because at least it came from a soybean and it has protein. Now, just so you aren't worried, my friend's dogs are all alive and well because he brought them to the vet ASAP to induce vomiting. Now, do you know why this doesn't happen to people? Well, that's because when you eat tartaric acid, you're not absorbing all the tartaric acid. And scientists actually studied this 100 years ago in 1933. They studied 24 men, 6 of whom were interns, which meant that they were fresh out of medical school. They gave one group 2-gram capsule of D-tartaric acid to swallow. This would be like eating a cup of golden raisins. They were the lucky group. The second group got a shot injected right into their behind, an intramuscular injection of tartaric acid. And by the way, high concentrations of tartaric acid is a myotoxin. That means it destroys muscle tissue. But I don't think they knew that at the time. But the group that ingested tartaric acid only had 20% recovered from the urine. So where did the rest go? Got fermented by their gut microbiome. And this study illustrates that people have known for over 100 years the power of our gut microbiome. And when you eat, you're not just eating for yourself, you're actually feeding your gut microbiome. That's probably why grapes are medicinal and have been used for over 6,000 years. Now, oftentimes people like to mix spicy with sweet foods. Have you ever sweat after eating cayenne pepper? Pretty spicy, huh? You're actually increasing your heat production or your metabolism, even though you aren't exercising. It's like a workout without working out. And that's why you may want to work up to eating cayenne pepper, which is number 5. Capsaicin is a compound responsible for its spicy kick and its fat-burning, anti-inflammatory effects to help you lose weight. You can achieve this by sprinkling 1/3 of a teaspoon of cayenne pepper powder onto your meals to activate the fat-burning properties. Now that's already pretty spicy, but believe it or not, some people will actually eat a whole tablespoon of cayenne pepper with their high-fat meals so that they can burn off some of that fat. Did you know that your body has several different types of fat? White fat, brown fat, beige fat, pink fat, and essential fat. A collection of a body of fat is called adipose tissue. Adipose tissue has more than just fat. It has nerve and immune cells as well as connective tissue. You may know of fat as a depot for energy storage. That's actually the job of white fat. Adipose tissue are also metabolically active organs releasing metabolic hormones that control your metabolism, and this together will affect your insulin sensitivity. Have you ever cuddled an infant? They're so soft and squishy. They are full of brown fat that protects them from the cold. Activating brown fat increases your metabolic rate. But gaining weight, that doesn't increase or activate brown fat. But you can activate brown fat through stimuli such as a cold bath or by eating cayenne pepper. By the way, capsaicin can also help reduce inflammation by inhibiting the activity of inflammatory molecules interacting with your nervous system. That's why people with arthritis and psoriasis use creams made from capsaicin. Cluster headaches, irritable bowel pain, and chronic indigestion can also improve with capsaicin daily. The trick is capsaicin is that you have to be patient, that things will get better and better over time because it depletes a pain molecule called substance P. And without substance P, the neurons can't signal pain. This may take about a week. These properties are not unique to cayenne pepper. Oftentimes you will notice as time goes on, the desired effects will get better and better eating all natural single ingredient whole foods. But certain foods just have more fat burning potential than others. In America, that would be the common blueberry, number 6. They are so powerful that you can blend them in a smoothie and they won't spike your insulin and blood sugar, unlike blending other fruits like apples. What's so special about blueberries? Well, like mulberries, they are full of anthocyanins that can induce fat burning, lower insulin resistance, and protect your DNA from daily damage. Now, the key lies in your gut microbiome. They actually ferment the blueberries that you eat. That's because most of the anthocyanins aren't absorbed. And when they get down to the colon, where most of your bacteria live, well, they can ferment them into beneficial anti-inflammatory molecules. Some of you may eat yogurt for its probiotics, but it's been shown taking probiotics, that doesn't necessarily make them stay in your gut. Otherwise, it should just be a one-time pill. And this is why eating berries can help ensure that you're going to cultivate good gut microbes and allow them to thrive. When they're happy, they in turn improve your metabolism. And in fact, over time, drinking blueberry smoothies daily can improve your insulin sensitivity. And if you sip it, you'll lose more weight. This study just used freeze-dried berries. Now, you may be wondering if frozen or dried berries are as good as fresh berries. The short answer is no, because all of them are processed differently. To maintain the most polyphenols, though, freeze-drying seemed to be the most beneficial. It was even higher than some fresh berries, and that may be due to transit times. So in general, fresh has more total antioxidant power. Number 2 would be osmotic dehydration. Number 3 is convection drying. And number 4 is if you find berries with added sugar and salt, they can lose 50% of their antioxidants. And definitely stay away from gummified berries. That's the least powerful form of berries. Now, don't restrict the fat-burning power to just blueberries. Try some raspberries, which is number 7. Now, I've seen the market sell whitish colored raspberries. They're so expensive. And if I'm going to spend that type of money, I want those anthocyanins. So I want my raspberries red. If they don't have that red color or purple color, they're not going to have anthocyanins. Apparently, raspberry anthocyanins can burn fat 3 times better than capsaicin. This fact made headlines over 20 years ago, And if you search on PubMed, you'll find 135 publications on the mechanism of raspberry ingredients and mammalian fat burning. However, keep in mind when you eat whole food, you're going to get other benefits like reducing blood pressure. If you ever visit Washington and Oregon, you'll notice that blackberries grow like weed, and several times I've had the urge to pick them because they too have been shown to improve fat burning and insulin sensitivity. So number 8, eat blackberries. The thing is, all these berries are so expensive to buy. With all of this health and nutrition benefits, I don't understand why the government doesn't subsidize berries, but subsidizes corn and dairy and Ozempic. If they just spent $1 billion on encouraging anthocyanin-rich foods like berries, that would revolutionize the healthcare of our nation and probably would significantly reduce our medical costs. Currently, Ozempic costs $1,000 a person per month, and I wish they could give me $1,000 a month to buy groceries. I could feed my whole family of 5 and have spare to share. Now, when you buy your berries, hurry up and eat them or wash them with a vinegar solution to reduce germs and pesticides. Just by washing them, you can remove 50% of the pesticide. If you soak them straight in white table vinegar, or if you make a 10% salt solution with 1 part salt and 9 parts water, it can remove most of the pesticides left on the outside. Now, organic is always best, but eating non-organic is better than not eating any at all. Now, so far, the foods that I mentioned are low in calorie and very difficult to store. But the last 2 fat-burning foods are heartier and they're easy to store. Do you like pasta? Did you know that if you use black cumin seeds with that pasta, you can make that a much healthier, metabolically active meal? It's not surprising. Black cumin is actually an ancient seed from Africa and South Asia and eaten as a spice for bread, as mentioned in the book of Isaiah, and used medicinally to treat various diseases. 1/4 teaspoon of black cumin daily is a cheap appetite suppressant for pennies a day. Now, this is not regular cumin. Black cumin is Nigella sativa, and it's shown to be beneficial for gastric ulcer, thyroid disease, and dementia. I was really impressed in this study that gave black cumin capsules 3 times a day to those infected with Hepatitis C virus for 3 months. Now, what does fat burning have to do with hepatitis C? Well, 70% of people with hepatitis C also have fatty liver. It's impressive that a seed like black cumin for pennies a day can improve leg swelling called edema. They had some improvements in other clinical signs, but they weren't statistically significant. However, that's pretty good considering that these people appeared to have liver failure or cirrhosis. Their platelets also went up and their fasting sugars also improved. And it is amazing that their viral load, although still high, was reduced by half. And this was just 3 months. I wonder if they kept going, if they would have continued to make even more of a difference. Now, this study was done back in 2013. At that time, we had really ineffective, poorly tolerated hepatitis C drugs. Today is a different story. We can cure hepatitis C, which can cause cirrhosis and liver cancer. So if you're over 18, you should get screened for hepatitis C, as we now have very good, very well tolerated medicines that can cure hepatitis C. Now, number 10 are apples, but you have to eat the peel. In the waxy peel of the apple is a compound called ursolic acid. Ursolic acid helps to increase muscle mass as well as the activity of brown fat. And in mice, it helped obese mice lose weight. And it did it by changing their gut microbiome. In fact, if you eat foods high in these ingredients, your gut microbiome can convert that to trimethylamine, which then gets converted by your liver to trimethyl N oxide. That actually raises your blood pressure through constricting your blood vessels. This probably contributes greatly to our endemic high blood pressure crisis, and why when people pick up pathogenic bacteria, their blood pressure rises even more beyond being overweight. And this is why it's important to eat blood pressure lowering foods. And if you want to learn more about that, watch the next video.